videos then either.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It wasn't none of that. In 85. What was you doing in 85? Was you
man.
like Fab with just 5, or was you just Fred Dog? You know what I mean? What?
Well, I was coming out of the graffiti scene, which I had been heavily involved with as an artist, and was starting to get a little bored with the art world and trying to move into directing some music videos, which eventually did happen. But you know what? We got some comments from some other artists about how they felt about what was going on with Krush Groove at that period. Let's take a look at some of that.
No doubt.
The idea to make a film about the hip-hop industry was one that came from the movie Breakin'. The fact that they made a movie about something that was related to the culture was a big deal for us. It wasn't a great movie in our opinion. It wasn't as authentic as we wanted ours to be. Because of that movie, the possibilities existed.
It brought rap into another audience. Because, of course, a lot of whites wasn't into rap music. But once they seen the movie, they started getting into the whole hip-hop culture.
We did Krush Groove, and wow, just to do a movie with Sheila E. was great. I was like, whoa, we're big time, top notch.
And Sheila E. was pushed on us by the producers, the other partners in production, and the Warner Brothers. They thought that might make the movie commercial. In the beginning, there was some discussion of me playing myself, but it didn't make good sense. You need an actor. There was some emotion. There was a little bit more serious part. Flanders was a very talented guy, and he proved to us that he had the range to go all the places that this character needs to go.
Russell, his story is a success story, and it was an honor to play that part.
When they look back on the film, it's kind of embarrassing. It's silly because when you look at it, it's so amateurish in a lot of ways. He made it for no money. It had this huge cultural significance. It sold so many tickets. It was the #1 film in America at one time, over Jagged Edge, and it cost no money, and sort of opened the door for a lot of other films that were made right after. And the movie cost like $2 million. It made like 30. I would never have imagined that that we would gotten to build this culture and be so significant in American culture.
True. Krush Groove did have a major impact on a lot of other artists, as well as my man Tretch.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? Tretch, thanks for coming down, by the way.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoying this movie Krush Groove with me. And we getting ready to jump back into the flick, and in a minute, when the movie starts, LL Cool J is going to make his worldwide on-screen debut.
LL.
That's right.
Energy,
hardcore.
baby.
Check it. Krush Groove. Fab Five Freddy here, back watching the movie Krush Groove, definitely going back in the day, all day with MTV. Now what we just saw in the whole scope of the hip-hop game was pretty incredible, because that scene had LL Cool J's debut. Now what was also pretty amazing is that LL, he hadn't really been guaranteed a major role in the film, you know what I'm saying? Basically LL was like an extra. You could see him in a bunch of other scenes running around carrying records and stuff like that. It was pretty funny, but he obviously blew up.
Well, when I was young and I did the movie Krush Groove, I was staying with, God bless the dead, my best friend Cornell. That was my man. He was like a little bit older, but he kind of took me in and also co-created in when we were a lot younger. Because, I had made 1 or 2 records, but I really didn't have a place to stay, so he let me sleep on the floor in his basement. And he used to call me every day from work, go down to the set, they're filming this movie Krush Groove, go down to the set, they're filming this movie Krush Groove. So I was like, I don't have a part in the movie. He was like, go down there anyway, you'll get a part. So I ended up going down to the movie set every day, being an extra. Just carrying stuff, moving crates, mopping, doing anything I could to just be a part of the movie. And eventually, they decided to give me a part in the movie. And that part in the movie turned out to be one of the most instrumental events in my career.
Also in that scene where LL auditioned was Andre Harrell and a guy named Alonzo Brown. Those two guys were rappers that went by the name of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Andre, who was Dr. Jekyll, soon after the movie was made, decided he didn't want to be a rapper anymore. He wanted to be an executive. So he went out with the help of Russell Simmons. He started his own label, Uptown Records, where he helped launch the careers of Puff Daddy, Mary J. Blige, Jodeci, and Heavy D, as well as a whole lot of others. Another thing we want to point out is that Chris Rock, who's definitely a major movie star right now, a major personality, and he also hosted last year's MTV Music Video Awards. But, Chris wasn't always getting the big starring roles. When Krush Groove continues, we want to see if you can spot him in what has to be probably his first on-screen appearance. Krush Groove, when we come back. 1985, Freddy here. We're watching the movie Krush Groove. Thanks for hanging out. Definitely Krush Groove, considered one of the most influential rap movies of all time, after Wild Style, I should point out. Also want to know if anybody in the audience is going to be able to spot Chris Rock's cameo. That's coming up in the upcoming segment, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Also, there's going to be a performance by New Edition, and they were still had the teenage voices going on. That's kind of funny. There's also going to be a performance by the Beastie Boys. Now, this performance is when they still sounded like a cross between a hardcore punk band and a hip-hop group. The Beasties' first major exposure just after their obscure indie single Cookie Puss came out, but this was also before License to Ill's mass success. I mean, that was a chart topper. There's also going to be a lot more coming up, the movie Krush Groove, when we come back. Hey, yo, y'all, of course, you know we're watching the major motion picture Krush Groove, and right now I'm honored to be sitting with one of the original members of the group, the Fat Boys, featured in this movie, my man from Brooklyn, Cool Rock, up in here. Marky D, you just told me he's upstate.
Yeah,
working on
not
some...
in jail, he's working on some...
That's a good point. He's upstate in the studio, not upstate in jail.
Yeah, he's working on some... He's working on some stuff with other rappers.
From other rappers.
Yeah.
And on a sadder note, unfortunately, Buffy, obviously a big part of the group, is no longer with us. He passed away a couple of years ago, congestive heart failure, we're sorry to say.
Yeah,
but
back in
95, but 10 years ago from that, back in 1985, you made the movie Krush Groove. What are some of your remembrances from that period, from that time, and how true to life is your story in the film?
Very, very true. You know, everything was like on point, except we didn't win the contest in the movie. We did win it in real life.
You won in real life.
Yeah.
So in real life, you guys went up to the Disco Fever to enter this rap contest,
yeah, right.
and you won.
Let me make a point though. We did go to the Fever with a group called the Bad Boys.
Oh,
and they took us up there.
Okay.
And they didn't win. They didn't even get to like either the semifinals or anything. We had wind up winning.
Wow.
Riding back on the train, they wanted to kill us because we was just going to hang out. And, you know,
riding back to Brooklyn, there was beef on the train, right?
It was major beef. They wanted to stomp us out, you know.
Tell us a little bit about, you know, being teenagers. You guys were probably teenagers at the time. What was it like being in the game at that early point in the hip hop game in 1985? I mean, what was it like for you guys?
It was just like, you know, you hear all these brothers on records that you grew up, you know, like Treacherous 3 and, you know, Grandmaster Flash, Furious 5, and everybody's thinking Melly Mel was the best MC in the world, and getting to see him, it was like you starstruck, you know what I'm saying? Because you didn't think of nothing else but rap back then because it was so brand new, and they didn't play it on the radio much, but when they did play
park jams back then.
Go to the park jams and just have fun.
Wow.
And once we got put on to that stage of being where they were, it was like, you know, we finally here. It's like time to have fun, whatever.
And isn't it funny seeing how the fashions have changed so much? It's amazing, right?
It's kind of crazy.
Clothes were kind of tight back then. Well, listen, another thing that the clothes were tight. But also what we caught looking at the film a little while ago was we saw somebody lurking in the background, which we're pretty sure was Chris Rock. We're going to roll that scene back again and let you guys get a close look.
Chris Rock in the movie?
That's right.
Yeah, the Jerry curl?
Stupid, man.
It looked like Chris Rock to me.
Yeah, I guess it was.
He was about 16, whatever. Well, anyway, we're watching the motion picture Krush Groove, y'all. We are going back in time. Got my man Cool Rock from the Fat Boys hanging out with us, formerly of the Fat Boys, and we're getting ready to get right back into that movie, so stay with us. Hey, yo, we're back watching the movie Krush Groove with my man Cool Rock right here, who's one of the original members of the Fat Boys. Although I should mention, my man is no longer a fat boy. What was it, Jenny Craig, Slim Fast?
Nah, just working out.
Just working out?
Just doing my thing.
That's good. But you know, but back in those days, you guys were all kind of large, literally. And the famous food scene, which is coming up, we're going to see in a minute. Tell us about filming that.
Oh, that was like an all-day process. And you gotta... at the time, we hated our manager for doing that. You know what I'm saying? We was eating like pigs.
You guys were really eating that.
We ate the stuff, and half the stuff we ate, half the stuff we spit out because it was all cold and nasty, and you know, it wasn't like everybody thought it was. Everybody thought like, oh, those guys are pigs, nasty, you know. It wasn't nothing like that.
My favorite thing about that scene is right after that scene, it cuts to all three of you guys running. It seemed like you guys ran like all the way up to Harlem after eating all that food. So I thought that was kind of appropriate.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was cool. But you know what else I think is interesting that we should point out? That at the time when you guys were the Fat Boys, it was before there was a Notorious Big, a Heavy D, a Fat Joe, and a Big Pun. And you guys actually kind of paved the way for overweight rappers to be taken seriously and in some cases sexy.
As far as that goes, with them being overweight, it was like, yeah, I guess you could say we paved the way. But some of those guys are great lyricists. They didn't have nothing to do with what we was rapping about.
Right.
But at the same time, people probably looked at them and said, well, if those three fat guys can do it, they probably thought to themselves, if they can do it, I can do it, you know?
Wow. Well, it's history, y'all, and we're looking at it from made back in 1985, the movie Krush Groove. Let's check out some more. That was a pretty long segment of the movie, and if you can recall, earlier on, there was a scene where Curtis Blow and the Russell Simmons character that were having a little argument that Curtis had abandoned Russell. In reality, that scene came to have some meaning. See, in actuality, after the film came out, Curtis Blow decided he wanted to go to California and pursue bigger and better things. And that breakup was something that I'm sure Russell was pretty upset about. But what neither knew at the time was that Simmons would become a pretty major player in hip-hop's new direction.
When Curtis Blow left to move to Hollywood, it was because he had all these offers and he had this, and rap was growing, and he was the king of rap. That's what we always dubbed him and promoted him as, the king. So he was king, and he was what Hollywood wanted, and we were sort of, you know, stuck in our attitude about keeping it real or honest or whatever it was. We had to represent the hood in a certain way, and we had to be exactly like we were when we stood on the corner, as opposed to, you know, more polished and more accessible and more, because Curtis had become that. His music was more commercial. He was the statesman for all of us. He was the diplomat. So he went to Hollywood, he left us, and it was all good. We were never upset with him. He was always, you know, he's always will be a person who I love and respect.
Stay tuned for more Krush Groove. By Freddy in effect up in this piece, you know what I'm saying? We watching the movie Krush Groove, definitely going way back in the day. You know, in this fictionalized version of Russell Simmons' rise in the record industry, you find him and his younger brother Run in somewhat of a rivalry. But in real life, I should point out that no such rivalry ever really existed. They're very close. In fact, Russell tried to sue Profile Records unsuccessfully. I might add, in order to get Run DMC out of their contract and onto Def Jam, really bring the family all together.
The independent companies had to survive and had to make certain kinds of deals in order for them to have a margin that made sense. Big companies came along, they paid bigger margins, and they made the industry more competitive in terms of rappers versus mainstream artists, and they were the mainstream artists, and so the independent companies basically fell by the wayside. Profile is one of the last ones standing. It's kind of difficult to be that kind of company and compete with the big guys. So for Run DMC, it's always been a little bit of a struggle because they've never had the resources that LL Cool J has on Def Jam, or that, you know, Public Enemy had, or the Beastie Boys have on Capitol and had on Def Jam. So it's kind of tough, you know. It's tough for the independent label, and it's tough for the artist to survive in that environment.
Let's get back to the movie. Yo, I'm still bugging out over that love scene, you know what I'm saying? Where the Russell Simmons character shows up at Sheila E.'s door at 3 o'clock in the morning. I need a place to stay, okay? Next thing you know, my man is crying and lighting 3 candles, and before you know it, he's in the pants. I guess he's a player of some sort after all. We'll be back with more Krush Groove.
And stand on your knees, stand on your hands.
Yo, it's Fab, and we're back, Krush Groove, and we're almost at the end of this hip-hop look back at what it was like back in the old days. And, you know, it's funny in thinking back, though, because people are always complaining now, you know, about the violence and so-called negativity in rap. But you know, there's one thing that you could definitely say about Krush Groove.